Hey there everybody, Mark Curley here, back with another video. This time it's not really a how to draw video, this is going to be a video offering tips on illustration techniques. I'm working right now on a real illustration for a chapter book. It's going to be coming out next April. And I think what I'm going to do is just sort of jump into adding some watercolor to this, and then kind of talk to you as I do to explain what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and so forth. I'm starting with a light gray layer of watercolor here. This is going to be a black and white illustration, and I think it's useful for people to learn how to work in black and white, because a lot of books are published in black and white. You'll notice even the most successful series, Harry Potter, has little illustrations at the top of every chapter. Well, all of those illustrations are in black and white. The book is published in black and white because printing in color is very expensive, and it would raise the cost of those books. So being able to illustrate in black and white is certainly useful, and something worth learning how to do if you want to become a professional illustrator. Like I said, I'm trying to keep it light here. So that means mixing in a lot of water with the kind of gray watercolor paint that I'm using. And you notice that I kind of started with one of the darker areas here, just because you can never be sure how dark it's going to be until it really hits the paper sometimes. So it might be best when you're just starting out to go for an area where it doesn't matter if it's going to get too dark. So that you can kind of get used to the paint and knowing how much water you've got in it and so forth. That's my kind of trick for doing that. I'm going to go ahead and keep adding watercolor throughout this whole piece. In fact, I think I may, with this video, do a mix of real-time and time-lapse, because I think, to be honest, it could get a little dull watching me do this entire illustration, start to finish, talking all the way. So why don't we do that? I'm going to kick this into time-lapse just to finish putting on an initial gray layer here, and then I'll come back and slow it down and do real-time as I continue to add more detail to it. Okay, so I'm done with that, and I'm going to switch now. I was using this brush here, a number 4, and I am going to switch. It's a kind of a mid-sized brush. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, which I think is just a 0 is what they've got on this brush, to do a little more of the finer details. Now, I don't know how much of this is showing up, sadly. Because my tendency is to start very light. I don't want to put anything down too dark that I'm going to regret later. So I'm always starting pretty light to begin with, and sadly I think that means that it's not showing up too well in the video so far. But maybe it might help if I zoom in a little closer on one particular area so you can get a little more of the detail work. Let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so I've zoomed in now, and going to try to get some of the detail work done around the eyes. People might be a little curious about what this illustration is. It's a picture of a baby triceratops. Don't want to give it away, but there's this story that I've been hired to illustrate involves a triceratops, and I had to learn how to illustrate one, so I went off to the library, got books, and looked on the internet for reference, and tried to teach myself how to do a halfway decent triceratops. So still keeping things fairly light. when I was doing things in time-lapse over here on the tail, you might have noticed I pulled out a piece of tissue. It's a little trick, illustrator's trick with watercolor. When you feel like you've made a mistake, in fact, I'll do it on purpose. Hopefully I won't completely blow it, but so I've loaded up my brush, and this is probably going to come out too dark right here as I do like that. Oh, it's not even that dark, but say you think that that's too dark, you've got too much in there, and you're like, oh, I don't want it to be that dark. And you can pull out just a, this is like toilet paper. And while it's still wet, you dab on it just once, and that'll bring it back off and allow you to correct that mistake. Now you can only do it while it's still wet, although that's not true actually. When it completely dries out, depending on the quality of your paper, you can add water to it, make it wet again, and then again dab it off a little to kind of get some more control over how dark it's going. So there's a little trick for you. Watercolor can be a kind of unforgiving medium, and that's partly why I'm so tentative and I start so light, because I really don't want to make any huge blunders. You can't do layer after layer after layer of watercolor. It starts to get really muddy, and it'll start to look really horrible. So I'm very cautious with watercolor and just very gradually head from light to dark, kind of inching my way towards the finished product as I figure out where the really dark spots need to be. My approach to watercolors or to illustration is a little different than some people who will ink the illustration first and then add watercolor later. I've talked about this in other videos. I just arrived at this on my own. I felt that if I did all the inking first, it would become primarily a pen and ink illustration with color added later on. And I didn't want that to be the case. I wanted the color to be part of the structure of the illustration and not just an afterthought. And so I developed this technique. I shouldn't say developed, I'm sure other people have done this, although I haven't met very many. I came up with the approach of doing a little bit of the watercolor first to get the illustration going, and then coming back with the ink later. In fact, the way I'm going to be doing this illustration, there's going to be more than just ink. I'm going to be combining ink with black colored pencil. My black Prismacolor that you've seen me use on so many of these videos. So let me stop it for now and come back to do some of the inking. Okay, well, I've pulled back a little bit here to do some of the inking so that I can cover maybe a little more territory. I'm using a Micron number 08 here. A lot of people feel that's quite thick. You might enjoy using a 05 or a 03 for those finer details. And I have said this in other videos before, but I might as well say it again. The reason that I'm choosing this 08 is that it has a variety of thickness. When you push down, it gets thick. When you let up, it gets thin. And it sort of simulates the look of a brush in a way, which it's nice to get a little variety, not have all the lines exactly the same width. At least that's a look that I like to go for. So, I'm just going in here, and another advantage that I feel of doing at least a little of the watercolor first is you can make a choice about which lines are going to be outlined, what parts of the illustration get an outline, and what parts of the illustration you might just let the watercolor do the work. And so that's what I'm kind of doing here. I'm deciding, just leave this blank. There's no need. I got the toning over here to kind of show the separation. I might just drop in a little hint of extra line work there. But that's part of my theory of doing a little bit of the watercolor first. I can make these decisions about what gets a line and what doesn't. I'm going to go ahead and make this a nice shiny black eye here. Although I may want to work back into that later on to make it have a little extra shimmer to it. And so you can see me sort of pulling back a little maybe on the pen to get and sort of tilting a little to the side here to get it really thin at certain points. And then sometimes if you want it to be nice and thick, you can kind of go more straight down. I find it hard to control, but I will go a little more at a, I don't know what it is, 90-degree angle to the page when I want to get a nice thick line. These are blades of grass here. I'm going to try to kind of dash these in quickly. I've talked about this when drawing hair. The speed of your line shows up in the illustration, and a lot of times things like hair and grass, you want to get those lines in there quite quickly, just to sort of reflect the smooth line. I mean, ironically, you can make a smoother line really fast when you kind of lose a little bit of control over the pen. You move really quickly and you get this smoother line. When you draw slowly, with more or less complete control over the pen, the line is not going to be quite so smooth. I guess every little tremor in your hand shows up. So as I'm inking something, I'm always sort of moving between fast lines and slow lines. I couldn't do an entire illustration with these super fast lines. I just don't have that kind of skill. But, I go in with sort of average speed lines, and then every once in a while where I think I'm going to be able to get away with it, I'll try to just dash the line in real fast, so that you have this variety of thick lines, thin lines, super carefully drawn lines, looser lines. My teacher back in college, David Small, I've mentioned him before, was always encouraging me to make looser lines. He said, "Mark, you need to loosen up." And it is true that illustrations that have absolutely no loose lines at all can look kind of stiff. But I'm not a believer in, there's one good way to draw. No, of course not. Some people can make that work, the sort of stiff line look. So, everyone finds their own way of doing things. So this is a point where I feel like I've maybe done enough of this inking stuff. I'm not done by any stretch, but I'm going to stop here and maybe go back in with the watercolor. So let me put a pause on here. So here we go. I'm always talking about how I do the color first and then I do the lines afterwards. That's really not completely true. I'm kind of going back and forth to be more accurate and bringing them both in together so they're integrated, the line and the color. The color, that first wash, that really first light wash of color gives me some ideas about where to put the lines. And then if I stop and I've got some lines in place and I come back, then those lines give me some ideas of where to put the color. And I kind of keep going back and forth. Here's a little trick for you. Notice as I do the color on this horn, I'm not bringing the shading all the way down to this line. I'm leaving a little bit of white. And that sort of gives the illusion of reflected light. Now I'm dipping the brush into the water and taking a little bit of this paint that was here and loosening it up. I don't know how well this is showing up on the video, but I didn't want such a harsh line right there, so I'm loosening it up with the water. And sometimes you are actually taking a brush that has no paint in it at all, just water, and you're using that to loosen up paint that's already on the paper. Let's see if I can do this again, only this time I'm going to zoom in so you can really see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to try this again with this other horn here. Maybe need to darken it up just a little. Hopefully it won't get too dark here. So I'm leaving just a little bit of white over here along this edge between the line and where I'm putting the ink. And yeah, we're getting kind of the same thing here, where I feel that this line, this edge, is too harsh, you know, it's not gradual enough for me. So I'm emptying the paint out of my brush, I'm just putting water, and now I can go back in while that paint is still a little bit wet, loosen it up, and make a gradual fade. See how that works? So that's a little bit of a tip there for you. And you know, this stuff can be used not just for doing a triceratops, but if you, anything, you know, that you're working on, you have a part of the illustration where you want it to have that kind of 3D reflected light quality, which is what we've got over here. This is like sort of reflected light. That helps your picture look more 3D, so you can look for places in your own illustrations to use these techniques. I've had people ask me, you know, can you do something like dragons and mythical beasts and things like that? And this video here may be, well, it's certainly the closest to that kind of thing that I've done so far. And hopefully the techniques that you see me using here would be real easy to apply to an illustration of a dragon or something like that. I'm going to try to add just a little bit of texture here to little dots here and there to convey that feeling of the scaly, lizardy skin. And I got to watch because I'm zoomed in so tight I can only work on a very small area of the illustration right now. But I'm being very careful not to overdo it. That can be one of the big problems with coloring an illustration, is you just get a little carried away and start putting dots everywhere, and then that kills the effect. So I'm going to try to stop before I go too far. And I may even, here's an example of how you can kind of erase a little. Like I'm not too happy with that, so I just put some water in there, and see how I'm kind of lightening it up. I don't know how much this shows on video. Sorry if you can't see too much of it. But let's pull back, and I'll show some other techniques with the black colored pencil. So I've pulled back now a little, and I've got my trusty black Prismacolor pencil, and I'm going to go in now and start adding a little texture here and there to convey this sort of scaly, lizardy skin. You get like I began to do with the watercolor. You can do this sort of thing with watercolor. I think for me, I prefer trying to do it with a black colored pencil. As you can see, I'm always mixing together lots of different media as I work. I just feel like I personally can't get all the effects that I'm looking for with any one of them. The ink creates this very bold, hard line. The watercolor creates these nice tones. And for me, the black colored pencil creates line work that is very, you know, if you let up on the pencil, it becomes kind of gray rather than that harsh black line that the ink is providing. So again, see me pulling way back on the pencil and kind of coming at a low angle. That sort of forces me to make light marks with the pencil and not to overdo it, or you know, in this case, just not to make really dark lines. I want these lines to stay light. Let the ink be the dark line. Let this colored pencil be my kind of gray, slightly fuzzy line. And again, I don't know how much of this is showing up on the video, but hopefully it's starting to go from this blank, kind of smooth-looking skin, little by little, to more of a textured lizard dinosaur skin kind of a look. And as I said before, remember how I had left this blank with the ink line. I can kind of fill in a little bit, just a touch, with the pencil to complete that effect without absolutely outlining every inch of it, as I, could have done with the ink. Sometimes it's nice to leave things a little bit blank. And notice that I'm not adding texture absolutely everywhere. As I said before, sometimes you just need to know when to stop, when to not get too fussy with adding detail everywhere. Because if you put the texture everywhere, then it has no power in a way. You need to, if you leave it in just some spots, then it looks really cool. You cover every inch of the surface with detail, then it kind of almost ceases to be detail. It just becomes this tone of lines. So, but again, there's no right and wrong way to do anything. If you prefer to fill in every inch of the surface with detail, go for it. That's everyone finds their own way of doing things. I guess I should just put it more in terms of here's why I'm not doing it, not covering every surface with the texture. Let me do one more thing. This is kind of line work, what I'm doing here, very light line work. Here, for this horn, I want to add shadow, so I'm pulling way back, coming down at a very low angle, almost parallel to the page, and just making little sort of circular motions with my pencil to add just a little extra shadow to these horns, make them a little more 3D looking, kind of help them to pop just a little bit more. And this is that third one. You didn't see me working on this one. I just went ahead and did it. And so there you go. Hopefully you're getting a kind of a 3D effect here. And now I want to add just a little more, so I'm pulling back, or kind of coming down to the tip a little more, and just add just a little more hint of direct darkness right there next to that white reflected light to complete the 3D popping effect. And hopefully that's working for making those horns look much more 3D. Well, I could spend the rest of this video just doing thing after thing on this illustration. I think maybe it's time to wrap things up for this time. Let me pull back maybe one more time to give you the context of what we're looking at here. Okay, so I've pulled back now, and you can see the kind of drastic difference between the section that I've really worked on and the section that I haven't. Just a word of caution here: this is not the way I would normally do it. Just because of the video being zoomed in to show detail, I took this one section and brought it almost all the way to completion. I wouldn't normally do it that way. I would be working on the whole illustration all at once. That's the ideal. And not to complete one section and then move on to another. Normally you really should be trying to ink everything or whatever in one pass, and then little by little bring it all up at the same time. Well, that's probably all the time we have for today. Let me just thank, as always, those people who have gotten Miki Falls, my manga series. I really appreciate you going out of your way. Some people have, you go into the bookstore sometimes, you look for it in manga, in the manga section under M, and you can't find it. A lot of people have made that extra effort to ask the people at the store to special order. I really appreciate you doing that. I know it's a hassle, but thank you so much for having the dedication to do that, and for getting in touch and letting me know what you think of the series. It is so rewarding to get feedback from people and to hear how much people have enjoyed reading the story. Well, that's it for now, my friends. I hope you found this video useful. I hope it helped you out, gave you some techniques that you can use for your own illustrations. Keep the suggestions coming for upcoming videos. I do read each and every one of them, and I will definitely do my best to make videos that go along with your suggestions. So that's it for now, my friends. Thanks for watching, and we will be back with another video real soon.